Okay, good evening. It's just gone 7:30 here in the UK in the evening. Some really interesting news. The NRL is planned to take an opening round match next year in the 2023 season to the US, and they wanted South Sydney to be part of that match. They have withdrawn, so they are looking for a new team to replace South Sydney in the match they want to take to the US. South Sydney's statement said they would believe that as the World Cup is taking place this year and they shortened off season, that it would be more beneficial to the NRL to take the games to the US from the 2024 season onwards. So they're trying to find a team to replace South Sydney in the game against the Dragons in the USA. I do believe that the NRL should be the league in regards to rugby league to grow the game globally on an international scale and grow the game in the US. The NRL has to take the lead in this. The Super League has obviously clearly failed with its Toronto Wolfpack and Ottawa Races experiment. That was a very expensive failure. So I do honestly believe that the NRL should be the league that is driving this forward. And we'll have to see how that all plays out. Um, so yeah, that's an interesting one. Obviously, England, South Africa, second test is continuing. Yes, we've had some very bad weather today across large portions of the south and east of the UK. A lot of heavy rain, a lot of thunderstorms. England hoping to bounce back from that first test defeat to South Africa. Be very interesting if they do that. Gary Ballance, England's test player, has come out and apologised for his part in the Yorkshire racism scandal, for the language used at the time. That's quite a striking thing. It's been a very difficult year, difficult 12 months for English cricket. Obviously, with what happened off the field before the Ashes, the debacle of the Ashes, wholesale coaching changes, new captain, and all the negative press that has obviously gone with that. Um, so it's interesting that now people involved are issuing statements and apologies. So that is quite an interesting subplot. Gary Balance's form, though, with the England side has also been poor. He's not selected currently with this England Test team. Um, I honestly do believe that Yorkshire scandal did have a massive impact upon the England Test side, considering that they lean heavily on players based in Yorkshire. So I do believe that did have a knock-on impact on the performances on the field and the team unity off it. And of course, when you have like key players within the side, such as Joe Root, who are also coming out of the Yorkshire County Cricket Club, I think that obviously had a massive impact. The Worcester Warriors situation, they're edging closer and closer towards administration. That'll be the first time a Premiership club has entered administration since 1999 with Richmond, who are based out of southwest London. But the owners are trying to find potential buyers for the club. They owe at least a minimum of £6 million to the taxman, amongst other things. Non-playing staff haven't been paid, and they're not even sure to take the field in their pre-season friendly against the Glasgow Warriors next week. There's concern that they might not be able to start the season and may go out of business. So the situation with the Worcester Warriors is quite serious. Also, reported Wasps are also in financial difficulty, and other unnamed clubs also are named to be in financial difficulty in rugby union. This is a sport where professionalism has been not properly implemented, and a lot of teams do financially have difficulty. So the Worcester Warriors situation is quite critical, quite frankly. And then question marks have to be asked about where the government loans of around 14 to 15 million have gone, and the financial assistance that the RFU received. So rugby union is in a bit of a tight spot in the club game, and a lot of questions have to be asked about the game's finances globally. I think that has to be on the agenda. For Champions League draw, look, it's taking place. I mean, Rangers have made the group stages, obviously, which I think is important. I haven't actually looked at the draw yet, but it's the fact that the group stage draw is now being completed, and we're going to have European group stage games soon. Just shows the impact that the World Cup is going to have. It's going to be a very congested footballing schedule this season, both before and after the World Cup. Very, very congested. And of course, with the proposals to revamp the Champions League in its format, having gone down, well, badly with fans, considering the negativity that's been surrounding European football. For a while, that's going to be interesting. Look, Rangers, obviously, they've got in. They've got it via the qualifying round, which is really good, obviously. That's a tough group. That is a tough group. But Rangers Liverpool is going to be a very feisty home and away set of fixtures in the group stage. Ajax will be very, very interesting as well. And Napoli, I think, should not be underestimated. That's actually quite a tough group. There's no easy games in that group, in my opinion. I think that's a very, very tough group on paper, and in practice, the atmospheres at all those games are going to be pretty electric. It's a pity it's not free to air TV anymore, but that's the direction UEFA have gone with the TV rights. Obviously, domestically in the UK, and we can question um, the the logic of putting more and more sport behind a paywall and disadvantaging poorer fans, and the pushback I think fans have had with UEFA over many years, and FIFA for that matter. There is definite pushback against the governing bodies of professional sport. I think there's a growing frustration, but that group looks tasty. I can't see an easy game for any side in that group. And Rangers proved last year in the Europa League, once they get on a bit of momentum, they were a very good uh, cup side. They proved that the last couple of seasons. I think the squad that Gerrard built, and then obviously Van Bronckhorst took forward, is quite good. Look, Celtic. I can't see Rangers or Celtic getting out of their groups. Um, if I'm being brutally honest, I cannot see Rangers or Celtic even finishing third in their groups. I mean, that would obviously allow them to drop down to the Europa League and continue their European odyssey. I can't see Celtic or Rangers getting past the group stage. But look, Scottish football's got extra funding from UEFA. I think part of the problem, I will do this with some more. I'll be looking at some more Scottish club histories, and I think Celtic and Rangers do deserve, the club histories and looking at their successes domestically and also in Europe. Um, how uncompetitive the Scottish league system actually is, and that's part of the problem. Um, so, and the UEFA coefficient doesn't help either, um, which is frustrating. The way that the champion, the European, um, well, they say they want to join England, but I don't think that would work. I don't think the police would want to have it. And if Rangers and Celtic join the English league system, you've killed Scottish football completely. You've made a bad situation worse. You've just taken all the money and the TV revenue just straight out of Scottish football, which will damn near kill the game. You might as well just put Scottish football in a coffin. There's a reason why Scotland have only qualified for one tournament since 1998. There's a reason why player development has basically stopped. Um, and, and that, in my opinion, is possibly the most brain dead decision they could possibly do. Fixing the UEFA coefficient and actually properly looking at how the European Cup competitions are structured um, would go a long way. And you've also got to ask, why. Look at the TV deal that Scottish football currently has, and you've got to look at the distribution of funds and the fact that you might as well combine the top two leagues, the Championship and the Premiership, into one division. You'll probably make it a more competitive league. The fact that clubs play each other 4 times is Is what it is. For me, the group of death is Bayern Munich, Barcelona, Inter Milan, and Blitzen. Pilsen. Look, Barcelona still have a lot of problems. Quite frankly, no, most leagues don't. They are bigger. They play twice each other twice. Scotland's top flight is actually quite small. Um, but unfortunately, when you have a top flight that's what, a dozen teams and a weird playoff promotion relegation format, which fans hate in place, and a football association that has got question marks over um, decisions made, strategies, development strategies, sponsorships. Um, you have to look at that. I think again, this is where the UEFA coefficient and league structures and how the UEFA coefficient has penalised certain countries and benefited others has led to a talent drain at youth level as well. And Scotland just doesn't develop the same talent it did 20, 30, 40 years ago. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, Scotland produced some world class players. World class players. You could probably field two Scotland starting 11s that would be pretty decent. Um, and in regards to which nations get three teams, four teams against the UEFA coefficient, and unfortunately, it's a very flawed system, which punishes some leagues and overly benefits others. I personally think the French league shouldn't get the amount of European qualifiers it does because the Portuguese league, ironically, is a bit more competitive. So is the Dutch league, but this is the situation we find ourselves in. A lot of club reunions. I see Lewandowski going back to Bayern, tomorrow he goes to Chelsea and Haaland to Dortmund. Yeah, a lot of former players playing their former clubs. That's very interesting. I do agree with that. That's quite funny. That's quite interesting. It's there are some people who think that like, some of these draws are actually fixed, and you could be skeptical and a bit cynical and say yes, they probably are. Um, I think the group stage is a flawed system. A lot of dead rubbers, unnecessary games, and unnecessary fixture congestion. But UEFA and the club presidents and the club boards want money. It's not about the fan experience. It hasn't been about the fan experience for 20 years, plus 2, 3 decades. This is all about making as much money as possible um, for very few. Yeah, it's the way that again UEFA coefficient leads to seeding, and not only that, it's what the club boards want. What the club boards want. Look, this is the problem here. Look, PSG is basically destroyed French football, and their domestic TV deal no longer exists. So the French league is in a dire financial state, and the longer PSG, crowd numbers will continue to fall. Um, and it and when you've got a very competitive sports market, which you do in France, it's very evenly distributed with where fans view content, what kind of sports they go to. French football will face a lot of severe difficulties in the years and decades ahead. Um, I fear German football could. German football, I don't think will go the same way as the French system financially. They've got a lot of corporate sponsorship. They've got a lot of corporate sponsorship. No one's got the rights. Canal Plus have 2 games. Amazon have 3. They have 5 games on, or 10 games or something on streaming or TV. 10 games. 10 games domestically. 8 on Amazon and 2 on Canal Plus. That's it. That's their TV deal domestically. That's how bad the French domestic rights are. We need to watch out for Qatar leaving France, buying a club here. We are. Um, I don't particularly want any more Arab money. I don't want any more dirty money. There's enough dirty money in the game as it is, and the way they tried the European Super League, and fans said no. And I think the fact that Man City signed up to it. Oh look, PSG are actually damaging the French league system. The other clubs know this, um, but UEFA tried and failed under the financial fair play. PSG appealed. The longer PSG are owned by the Qataris, you might as well kill French football. It's depressing, um, really, really depressing. Um, and the other French clubs know it. They can't financially compete. They can't. It's just not worth. It's just not worth turning up when you've got an opposition that can buy the league every year. And it is a depressing state of affairs because the French league, ironically, is actually historically very, very competitive, very competitive. And then Qatar, with its dirty money, turned up, and the rest is history. And that's the problem. Um, for so long, football did not care where the money came from, and then suddenly, in the recent last 2, 3 years, they suddenly care where the money's come from. It's grown a conscience. It's a fake conscience, but football's claimed to have grown a conscience. It hasn't. The football governing bodies and the leagues don't care where the cash comes from. They just have this, you know, and fans have suffered as a result. And I keep saying this: the quality of the product we see as fans has declined as a result. It really has. People go, Ronaldo and Messi are so epic. Well, when they were in their infancy as players, the Ballon d'Or was really a very competitive award to get as an individual award. And then it became a popularity contest, and there you go. Yes, and SEN, yeah, they used to, yeah, they're in a lot of mess. Bordeaux, they're owed money by Barcelona for the last 3 years. But no, so SEN have gone down, in trouble. Bordeaux are in trouble, and the French league has been, completely destroyed by PSG and the complete imbalance. And the French Federation does nothing about it. UEFA is toothless to do anything about it. And you might as well go, well, fuck it, fuck it. That's basically what has happened. Um, and as a result, the French TV deal's not worth pennies. French domestic fans have given up, and attendances are falling. And clubs like Saint Etienne, that used to be powerhouses within the domestic league and quite competitive in Europe, are now gone. So it sums it all up, really. Um, Something has definitely gone horribly, horribly wrong. But for so long, football didn't care where the money came from. And the longer PSG are on top of winning every year, the weaker the UEFA coefficient gets for France, and the weaker the position gets, you end up in a Scotland position where one or two teams win. The best thing for football would be for Qatar to take his money and leave. Um, but yeah, if PSG continue to dominate the French league as they are, the UEFA coefficient will punish them. It's like with Ajax, with Holland and Celtic and Rangers and Scotland. It punishes them if a team continues to dominate. If a league is seen to be uncompetitive, um, and yeah, that is the unfortunate truth. And the German league will, start to suffer as a result with Bayern Munich continually dominating, and that's where I think salary caps have to come in, transfer caps have to come in. You would then prevent a Barcelona type situation or a PSG type situation. You would prevent. It would actually control bad ownership, putting in a salary cap. Now the players would have to agree to that. The players would have to agree to that. Dortmund go through phases like this where they're really good for a period, and then financial constraints they have to sell players. Um, and Dortmund have had money problems in the past, and they will go through phases. But their youth development system is fantastic. Um, at the end of the day, Dortmund may still cash in on him. He may become a more focal point for that side and give him more responsibility, which could actually benefit him as a player. Um, but as I say, the longer Dortmund keep dominating the German league and the longer PSG keep dominating the French league, the weaker those leagues become. And I think that is starting to have a negative impact on their national sides. It generally is having a negative impact on the national sides. And I think Spain are not the side they used to be. But Spain's more political divisions within the Spanish FA and the national side with the various regional um, uh, differences between the Basques, Catalans, Castilians, and that undoes the Spanish team. They've had their day in the sun. Their style of football is outdated now. It's clearly flawed. Newcastle proved the tiki taka format's dead. Um, well, no, Spanish football was just antiseptic, um, very antiseptic, and I think Guardiola's flaws as a manager is his teams can't defend. Newcastle proved that, and his the Spanish obsession with playing out without a central striker means actually quite barely if you can shut down and choke the midfield, they have to then battle in the midfield and properly tackle, and they can't do that. Um, if you make the game stop start, they can't get their their game going, and they're vulnerable to a high press. They can't defend. They defend with a high line as well. They want to do everything in the middle of the field. Um, and counter attacks and high presses tend to do it. Parking the bus is suicide. You want to get in their faces in the midfield. You want to win the midfield battle by tackling basically. Yes, both the old firm, but I can't see either of them getting out of the group stage because I think Scottish football has declined to that point where it's unfortunate. And Scottish football is not where it was when I was a kid. It has massively, massively declined. I don't think so. I don't think Celtic or Rangers have a chance, really. Rangers, if they finish third, might go into the Europa League and have a good run again. But if I'm being brutally honest, I think the quality of football now is not what it was 25 years ago. I generally believe that we've seen the plateau of football. I think, and I think there's too much money in the game now. There's too many mercenary players. Um, a lot of there's players are overcoached, which is coach the flair, the skill, and the off the cuff play out of them. Uh, and yeah, it's definitely not the product it used to be. And and the amount of negative stories coming out about the sport in recent years has damaged the reputation of the sport. The governance side of things, the problems with governance, the allegations of corruption, and then the proven corruption. The player misbehaviour is just does nothing to try and get families interested. The hooligan behaviour of fans hasn't helped either. But it is what it is, and with so many leagues now becoming less competitive, it worries me with the direction sport is taking. To be honest, I want to see the Scottish league become more competitive rather than just Rangers and Celtic because in the long run that will benefit them. Leicester possibly up for sale. Certainly best players not replacing. Uh, not necessarily. There's a lot of rumours going around. I think if they do sell up, they're going to be worth a lot more money than what they were when they were bought by the current ownership, which could actually mean more investment. I think uh, I wouldn't know where else to really go in regards to the Leicester side of things. A lot of there's sports finance is up in the air at the moment. Um, but as you know, with the Worcester Warriors situation in rugby union, and rugby union in general has had financial problems for a long time. But then you do have to ask the questions about where's the money gone with the Warriors, with the emergency loans they've received from the government, and why they haven't paid their taxes. Um, I wouldn't say I was doing them dirty. It's just that that journey seems to have come to its natural conclusion. I think Brendan Rodgers has done a very, very decent job. The club is ironically very for football clubs go very well run. Whatever money they do get from player sales, they've invested very, very wisely. Um, and whether it's a change of owner or a change of manager, sometimes you have to go through this. As long as the process is fair and whoever comes in as a manager can turn things around. Oh look, Chelsea have constantly damaged the transfer market. That with their youth policy with having three full squads of players out on loan. They've abused the youth policy on transfers and contracts. Um, And of course, all those free agents that flooded the market from Chelsea in the summer as well, with the ongoing takeover when their contracts expired. Um, but look, new owner Tuchel, I think is under pressure. I don't think Thomas Tuchel, is the manager next season. I think there's going to be a lot of change at Chelsea. Um, yeah, Everton as well. That's another club that is obviously in the spotlight. Obviously, with their poor start, their last season being poor, narrowly avoiding relegation. Um, so again, it's to do with the coefficient. It's not like the old format where it's straight knockout, where you could get an upset game, like the FA Cup. You can't get that in the group stage. No, I got look again. European club football, the balance is not there because of the UEFA coefficient, which again benefits some leagues and harms others. Simple as and the way that the Champions League and in fact all the European competitions are now structured is uh, yeah, it's pointless games, unnecessary fixture congestion, and they've been milking the products. They've killed the product. They've ruined the product, and the TV deal domestically here in the UK doesn't help. And then what's come out about corruption in football, and as I say, the antics, the negative stories, the antics of players, the ticket pricing, the ticket allocations for finals. I mean, look what happened at the Champions League final. The selection of stadiums, um, the handling of the attempt at the European Super League is the clubs are too powerful, the governing body is toothless, and they've completely ruined the product, and it's less enjoyable to watch as a result because there's just too many unnecessary games. Go back to straight knockouts. It's not hard. You'll be able to sell those games for more money, ironically, on the TV deal. It's the it's just yeah they've devalued the product. They've devalued the domestic cup competitions by removing the Cup Winners' Cup. Um, and the it's the amount of unnecessary extra games, especially with the group stage that have to be played, is ridiculous. And again, and this is where the clubs think they have the power. The clubs got greedy. They threw their weight around and lost. But UEFA have unfortunately allowed a situation to occur where their spending rules are broken. Um, well, they claim that yeah, well, they claim they have a minimum stadium capacity, but as long as the stadium has hosted international matches and meets FIFA and UEFA standards, in theory they can play it at St Mary's. for example, the Amex. They chose Paris for political reasons. Put it out there, political reasons. Because obviously the French have got the Rugby Union World Cup next year and an Olympics coming up. That was a political decision, and it backfired badly. What was the Cup Winners' Cup? So basically, if you won the FA Cup, and I think if you won the League Cup as well, you qualified for the Cup Winners' Cup competition. And so Cup winners, you could be in the Champions League and the Cup Winners' Cup in the same, or the UEFA Cup and the Cup Winners' Cup in the same season. Um, However, they devalued it when they reformatted the Champions League in '97, and they merged the Cup Winners' Cup with what is now the Europa League, the former UEFA Cup, and they got rid of it. So ironically, it devalued the cup competitions. It did stop in '99, yes. A lot of the clubs that I've done club histories on, you'll notice I've say UEFA Cup Winners' Cup winner on this year. When I do Aberdeen, they've won a few. If you look at my Borussia Mönchengladbach one as well, um, they won it a lot in the '70s and the '80s. Borussia Mönchengladbach, they were a very good side back in the day, and were far more dominant than Bayern Munich actually. So if you want to know about a German side that was very good in Europe in the '70s, Borussia Mönchengladbach is the side to look at. Some sides really did very, very well in that competition. So hypothetically, Real Betis would have gone into the Cup Winners' Cup for this season because they won the Copa del Rey. Um, um, yeah, the Intertoto Cup as well, which is these have all been merged into what is now the Europa League. Why they rebranded that, I have no idea. Um, but no, I was 9, about to turn 10 when the last one was played, but I remember it very, very fondly. And I have a lot of fond memories of watching Cup Winners' Cup games. I really do. That they were fantastic because it really valued the domestic cup competitions. So you did get some really interesting matchups. Um, but yes, I've heard that Greenland are attempting to join CONCACAF, and they don't meet UEFA requirements. It's whether they get in is another thing, and whether they we'll see what happens. But yes, they are technically part of the Kingdom of Denmark. They are what they would class as an overseas dependency, very similar to what Gibraltar is to us in a sense. Um, and geographically, it makes sense to have them on the. No, they would have to be. There's a special dispensation if you're from Greenland on your citizenship. You get an ID card and stuff like that, and you have to have residency and things. And it's a very interesting situation with Greenland, much like Gibraltar, for example, or the Channel Islands or the Isle of Man. You are entitled, obviously, to a Danish passport, but also you can have an internal Greenland. You can also have paperwork for Greenland when you go overseas. But it'll be interesting to see how Greenland perform, and if they are allowed into CONCACAF, and how that all plays out. But as we've seen, the global game is growing, and that's a positive. Um, but no, the Cup Winners' Cup. I mean, that was a fantastic competition, and I think UEFA really screwed up when they got rid of that. And I think that's the downward spiral of the European club game and the European Cup competitions. Was the restructuring, the first major restructuring of the Champions League in the mid '90s. It went downhill after that. Yeah, well, yeah, as I say, some nations just don't have the sporting infrastructure or the finance to do it. Um, and you know, rugby union and rugby league are global games as well. So are cricket, but they don't. Not every country has that uh, wealth, infrastructure, and also interest. Not every. You got to remember a lot of the Pacific Island nations like rugby union, rugby league, and it'll be very, very difficult for football to get a foothold. Um, look how long it took the US to really get a proper professional league up and running and make it a success. Um, and just look how long it took to for the US and Canada with the MLS to actually have a decent league competition of a decent standard. It took a very long time, and it nearly failed in the first 10 years. And that's the wealthiest country, the wealthiest two of the wealthiest countries in the world, well, especially the wealthiest. And I think the ninth wealthiest country in the world couldn't get a domestic league to work effectively and make money. So certain Latin America, baseball is the most popular sport. In Argentina, it's actually polo is the national sport. And you go to places like Australia, AFL and Aussie rules and rugby league and cricket dominate. New Zealand, both codes of rugby dominate. You go to the Scandinavian countries, ice hockey is the sport of choice. So, s- while football is obviously the wealthiest sport in the world, it's the global sport. It's played in the most countries. It's got the most professional leagues, the most professional clubs. It doesn't necessarily, you know, um, you know, always win. Can you explain the new? Basically, it's crap and it doesn't work for football. Is the best way to describe it. It would work for a sport like ice hockey or basketball. It doesn't work for football. It actually means even more unnecessary dead rubbers, and it's a flawed system. It's basically like the European Super League with added um, bells and whistles. Basically, it's a watered down version of the European Super League with the current Champions League format merged together, and it's crap. So UEFA flex their muscles for a few weeks. And then, oh, by the way, European Super League on the slide. Fans hate it. Players are not overly keen on it. But UEFA's forcing ahead with it, so it shows. Um, no, well, the US still have to go through the repechage tournament in a couple of months. But no, Major League Rugby, I think, if properly, if when it's properly established after the first decade at least, because the US has obviously got the men's and women's World Cups coming up in a few years, um, and with proper coordination with the Canadian and US unions, I think it can benefit both the Canadian and US national sides absolutely and improve their quality because they have gone a bit downhill. Um, but the fact that Canada hasn't qualified for the World Cup and the US is still struggling to qualify is a concern, especially as the Canadians have been quarter finalists in the past. What's gone wrong with Canadian rugby is beyond me. But no, I think the reason why it's doing reasonably well is Canadians, North Americans, the US and Canadians love their contact sports. You look at the NFL in the US, you look at the CFL in Canada and the NHL in certain markets in the US and in Canada. Um, yeah, you see they like their contact team sports. They like the collision. Um, I think, and then with the NRL saying that they're going to take the opening match of round one of next season to the US, that's a big statement. Big statement that is. Now, South Sydney have pulled out because of the concerns with the World Cup when it is the shortened off season and the All Star game, and then taking obviously the first regular season game to the US. So now the NRL has to find a replacement team. They're banking on South Sydney because Russell Crowe is the part owner of the team. Um, but the fact that the NRL is saying, look, we are going to play a regular season game in the US as early as next year. Now, the South Sydney Rabbitohs board have said that we would want it to be in 2024, gives us more time to prepare and more time to get ready and prepare the product. Um, is very, very interesting. Um, but no, I think that would be interesting. But winning trophies in a poor league or being more competitive in a better league. Hmm. It honestly depends on what sport we're talking about and the financial rewards for doing so. Because if you're finishing in the bottom of a better league but winning the poorer league but making more money, money does have a benefit of going into the grassroots, going into the infrastructure, and obviously paying the players. It's more teams than it has to go nations from smaller nations, countries. I have no idea what that question's about. Um, if you added one team from the Premier League, would they to the Scottish Premiership? Yes. Fans want trophies. Fans want to be entertained as well. And only one team can win the league every year. Only one team can win the FA Cup, for example. Only one team can win the World Cup, in whatever World Cup we're talking about. Fans want to have the chance of trophies. Fans want to see their teams be competitive and try and win, and be entertained. They want to see effort as well. Fans are fully aware that their team has only a one in. Oh, if you want to have even more teams out of the Champions League, that means more fixtures and more fixture congestion, which the sport just cannot afford anymore. The amount of injuries is going up. Player welfare is clearly not being considered, and the fans aren't. Uh, yeah. If the Senators didn't get a team in the early 90s in the NHL, do you think they would have got a team in the latest bouts of expansion? Well, not with the arena in the current location. If the arena was in a different location in the Ottawa area, then yes. Otherwise, not with the Canadian dollar as it currently is, no. There's a reason why Quebec didn't get the team and Seattle did. There's a reason why Arizona is not being relocated to Canada. Um, Whereas no, it's not the AFL, it's the NRL. I don't know where they've decided to take the regular season games. I don't know. Um, where the NRL is deciding. If it was in, I would expect the West Coast just for the TV times for the domestic market. Um, would make logical sense. Possibly the East Coast because there's more population for the US market. Again for the TV times, but you've got to remember Australia's on the far side of the world. So I think the east coast of Australia is like 11 hours ahead of us. We are 5 hours ahead of the east coast of the US and 8 hours ahead of the west coast of the US here in the UK. Um, so we shall see what happens. But the NRL are committed to this US plan. I think it's a good idea. I think it can definitely grow the rugby league product in the US. I do think there is an interest for the rugby league in the US and Canada. Um, it needs that impetus, and I think the NRL can be the driving force behind that. I don't think domestic leagues have to shrink more. I just think the UEFA coefficient with football is broken, and the system within football is broken. I don't think the Super League happens because fans don't want it Europe wide. They've come out and said no, you might no. Do I think the Super League, rugby league wise, are out of ideas and broadening the fan base? There needs to be a new growth strategy, and this World Cup is key to that. Massively key to that. I think the current what they attempted with. I understand the logic behind the Toronto Wolfpack. I do. I understand you trying to get the US and Canadian markets and the US and Canadian dollars into the game. I do. I think that's why the NRL are taking a regular season game over there and wanting to make that a regular thing. They might even take State of Origin over there. But I think the RFL and the Super League boards have completely mismanaged the sport catastrophically, and they need clearing out and fresh ideas because what they're doing right now, they're doing nothing for the benefit of the sport. Um, I believe they did. Yes. Don't you think that even the quality they can't even qualify? They haven't. Well, they still have a chance to qualify. Um, still have a chance. Um, No, look, some sports markets are chronically underrepresented in the US, and there's a lot of money there. And they've just legalized sports gambling. There's a lot of money in the US right now. Um, with difficulty with the Champions League, it's gonna be chronic fixture congestion. And Look, we've already seen the early stages of the League Cup being played, and we're still in August, so the fixture congestion is going to be chronic. I think there's no FA Cup replays this season at all. It's going to be a nightmare, and I can see player welfare again. This World Cup is just a disaster. Is a disgrace before it's even kicked off. Player welfare has not been considered. Fans haven't been considered. The whole thing is a shit show. Football is killing itself. Um, I wonder why they targeted North Wales and Cornwall. There's not been potential for professional sports in those places. I don't know why what was going to become the Ottawa races went to Cornwall. I do not understand that. There's not enough money in Cornwall. There's no corporate money in Cornwall that I can think of. Um, um, the US are protectionists and their NFL won't be touched. You'll be surprised the NFL is trying to pinch rugby players, and they're taking that threat seriously. And the NFL's having so many. It's just the US wants to be the best at everything, right? So they want to be world champions at everything. Okay, otherwise it's not a true World Cup unless they can compete in it. Um, but there's clearly an interest in both codes of rugby in the US. I think American football has got a lot of problems and a lot of scandal, and a lot of families are being put off by a lot of the issues that American football has, and a lot of bad image that American football has. Baseball's in crisis, uh, and the MLS is starting to be a success now. So, but the Americans just love brutal contact sports, and there is an interest in rugby league. We'll see what happens. Look, they're taking a game, a regular season game, to the US. They're trying to sell the product. I don't see it as a bad thing. Um, it's a way to grow the global game. The Americans do have a national side. They have qualified for World Cups in the past. It's a chance to get professional rugby league in the US off the ground. So let's give it a go. I would say 60 to 70% of my friends gamble on sports with all the apps. I'm not a massive fan um, of sports gambling. To be fair, I think there should be some limits on it. Um, we're seeing a shift in attitudes here in Europe in regards to sports gambling. But in the US and Australia and some other countries are going the other way, whereas here in the UK we're tightening our regulations around it and advertising space around it, whereas in the US it's gone the opposite direction. Yes, it does bring revenue in, but there's also the negative impacts which have been discussed to ad nauseum. Good saying that at length that need to be considered. Um, and yeah, it is what it is. But no, I think there's liberalisation has brought a lot of income to a lot of leagues in the US, a lot of income. But at the same time, yes, I think the US it has become more rampant. Um, but teams need to maximise on the revenue they lost during the COVID lockdowns. They need to maximise on that revenue lost in 2020. So they're selling as many sponsorships as they can to as many gambling firms as they can, and each state is under increasing pressure with reduced tax revenues and reduced corporation tax revenues to again legalise it to allow those businesses to flourish to make money. It's the tax revenues they're after. Cornwall is very isolated, yes, and it's not really known as a sporting powerhouse of a part of the UK. No, who would do better? South Wales. The majority of players come from South Wales. It's just Wrexham up north, North England or South England. I think that would probably be a very close, very very close. I would. London produces a lot of players. The home counties, ironically, over the years have also produced a lot of players. Southampton have got a great youth system. Reading have got a very good youth system. Um, that would be quite close because the clubs are all evenly distributed as well, and across the country, the distribution of clubs, every town and village has at least a football club. So that's not the same as the north south divide in Wales. It's completely different. Uh, oh, London by itself can have its own professional league system. Um, there's enough professional sides in London to have their own league. Um, yes, South Wales is where the majority of the population of Wales is, though. It's where the majority of the money in Wales is. So yes, I know you love rugby league, but let's be honest here, it won't be like Union. Oh yes, right. Let me see. So Union, where teams are about to go into administration. Yeah, the Union where the unions are going broke. Okay, rugby union is fucked financially. Sorry, I have to disagree with you. Rugby union is absolutely bollocks financially. Um, the, they're not making any money in the Southern Hemisphere anymore. Um, the Super Rugby franchise system collapsed. The only money now in rugby union is in the US and Canada with Major League Rugby with the corporate money and Japan. Domestic league in Australia is on its knees. New Zealand actually got money issues. Um, the Worcester Warriors, if they go bust and Wasps go bust, the Premiership is at stake. The Welsh Union is bust, and its provinces are bust. The domestic league is basically bankrupt. Scotland's only got two professional sides. Have you not seen the NRL? Are you completely blind to how the $1 billion US dollar TV deal they've just signed? Like the fact that rugby league in this country is a mess is because of the RFL and Super League. If you go to like watch the NRL, it's watched. Like rugby union is in real bad trouble. Um, like bad trouble. Yeah, rugby league's got its issues and it's very regional, but rugby union is in a mess. With Wales, it's been a disaster for 30 years. Um, and now in England, it's in crisis as well. The unions had to get emergency loans from the government. Clubs had to get emergency loans from the government. Then you have to ask the question, where's that money go? The salary cap, the salary cap is being lowered. There's less money in the game now than in 2019. They're actually lowering the salary cap in English rugby union to below 2019 levels. Let that sink in. They've ring fenced the Premiership to an odd numbered league with no intent to expand to 14 teams. Yes, you do. However, the international game in rugby league is a mess. I do agree on that, but there's question marks over the Six Nations and the Rugby Championship. Like there's issues in regards, really, because CVC want to buy the Six Nations, then put it behind a paywall and take money out of the game. They're trying to put South Africa into the Six Nations. Yeah. The United Rugby Championship is no longer a European league because they've got four South African sides in it. And the Welsh teams are about to go bust. And were going bust before the pandemic. Rugby union is buggered financially. There is no money below the first tier level. The World Rugby elections of 2019 are being the problems are being exacerbated. The way that the professional game has gone is a mess. It's a shambles. Rugby union in clubland is a shambles. Internationally, it's fine. Clubland, it's absolutely diabolical. It's the old boys club when it comes to governance. The game is bleeding money. It's bleeding money. And when you've got private equity firms like CVC that want to take more money out of the game to line investors' pockets, it's because there's more union clubs. That's why. The international game is because of the international game, not because of the club game. Let that sink in. It's because of the international game being better organised at an international level. Club level is an absolute shambles. In Wales, no one turns up to club games. They just roll out the Six Nations for the Welsh side to watch them underperform. Let that sink in. Club level is a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. Um, there's like Worcester is not one of the bigger clubs, but if Wasps goes under, we have problems. The club game is in crisis. Internationally, it's fine. Internationally, yeah, the international game is okay, but the game has got problems. The sport has got problems. It's facing a massive lawsuit for the CTE. World Rugby is badly run. It the way the international game is governed, it benefits the tier one nations. The tier two and tier three nations get their best players pillaged. Match day fees. There's a clubs locally are struggling at the grassroots level. There is no incentive now to develop players. Um, Problems in rugby union have been allowed to exacerbate. They're not getting sorted. They're getting worse. Um, no, rugby league was started here. We gave the game to the Australians. They've just, in more recent years, better at making money out of it. If London had its own football league and the top clubs went, how would that impact the Premier League? Or how would it? Well, so London clubs in the Premier League: Arsenal, Crystal Palace, Brentford, Tottenham, West Ham, Chelsea, Fulham. What, 7 clubs taken out the Premier League? 7 clubs. The problem with rugby in Wales is they don't support the local game. There's a massive steroid use problem and drug use problem in Welsh Rugby League and Rugby Union, and both codes hate each other and try and kill each other. So they're trying to fight over investment. They can't even, you know, afford to play the players the centralised contracts. They've destroyed the regional game. They've mismanaged the sport's great. It's the number one sport. It's going down the toilet, and football's making money. Rugby isn't. There you go. 4 big London clubs though. Tottenham can't win anything. Chelsea sack managers like they go out of fashion. Arsenal have underperformed for the best part of 15 years. West Ham have overperformed for the best part of 5 years. Fulham are a yo-yo club. Palace are just there. And that, I think I've summed up London's top flight clubs. Like 3 of them claim to be part of the Big Six. One had a dodgy Russian billionaire with links to mafia. One's got some other dodgy Russian money, and the other one's owned by a tax exile. And 2 of them, one of them has only won 2 league titles. One hasn't won a league title for 15 years. And the other one sacks managers almost every week. Yeah, that's sustainable. Ah, no, London. Jokes aside and cynicism aside, London 7 clubs in the Premier League right now. There was one year where over half the Premier League was London clubs, or that half the top flight was London clubs. So yes, it would have a massive impact taking the London clubs out of the Premier League, and then you look at the Championship and League One and League Two. Taking the London clubs out of the Football League system does have an impact, especially the higher up the league system you go. Ironically, there's more clubs from London in the top levels than in the lower levels. Taking them out does have a massive impact. Massive impact on the league. I'm not watching white ball cricket anymore. Making a stand, had enough of it. Repetitive and boring. Good for you. You know, cricket is in got its own problems. Um, Cricket is another sport that unfortunately has got its growth strategy all wrong. Um, Chase the money, and has actually harmed itself with its growth strategy. Um, the funny thing is about taking the London clubs out of the Premier League and the Championship and League One and League Two. The game turned professional in the Midlands and the Northwest. You should really. I'm going to do some more club history videos. You'll see how late on a lot of these London clubs are formed. It really is stunning. Then again, there are many big. Yeah, there are many big clubs. Yes, more league titles have been won by the Northwest than any other region, and then London's second. Or no, is it the West Midlands? The West Midlands and London are pretty even when it comes to trophies and silverware and league titles and silverware won. Um, but the Northwest is the leading driving force of the silverware in this country. The most successful clubs come from the Northwest. The Southwest, nothing. Um, yeah, I think yeah, there are a lot of big clubs, fan base wise, history wise, success wise outside London. Absolutely, yes. Um, the FA Vase, that's for the non-league. Yeah, again, the fixture congestion is going to pile up. Um, oh, Newcastle, London being an independent state someday won't happen. It'd be surrounded by very hostile people. Newcastle Wolves, yeah, I would say that it maybe even Southampton on a good season if they got a good run of form in. Um, I don't like it when people call it top six, but you know, yeah, Lancashire have 7 league winners. We do. I've got to do video. I've got to do a video on Burnley at some point, which will be interesting. I've got to do a video on Burnley because they've won the league as many times as Spurs have. There you go. And then once I've done a video on Burnley, I've covered all the founding clubs of the Football League from Lancashire. Then I've just got to do Blackpool, and then and Morecambe and Fleetwood Town. Then I've done all the Lancashire professional clubs in the football histories series. Um, yeah, I've done Leeds. I've done Wolves. Wolves have a lot. Huddersfield have got more league titles than Spurs. They were the first club to win 3 in a row. You've got to recheck out the football club history videos I've been doing because you're not keeping up. Yes, they have. They were the first club to win 3 in a row. Greater London's inside the M25. Watford is not inside the M25. Greater London is inside the M25. No, Spurs aren't. Everton are they? Everton are. And actually, Spurs have won a lot of FA Cups. I will admit that Spurs have got a good record in the FA Cup. I will say that. But league-wise, no, terrible. How terrible? How they can say they're part of these European Super League is farcical. They can't even win their domestic trophies they compete for. Yeah, I've got to do a video on Wigan Athletic as well. Yes, the first team to win the FA Cup to then get relegated the same season. At the moment, it's Man United, Liverpool, Arsenal, then Everton, then Man City for league titles. Chelsea are sixth. That's a league title. Spurs are well down the list. Uh, yeah, Everton are currently fourth on the league titles win lists. They won't be there for much longer. Aston Villa, I think, are more likely to overtake them for the trophy, and I think Aston Villa have won more trophies than Everton as well. Um, so it gets interesting. It does get very complicated when you look at the history. Although Everton are third all time for top flight points collected, they've only had 4 seasons outside the top flight since the multi division system was introduced. So that's quite an intimidating record that Everton actually have historically, and a lot of people are surprised by it. A lot of football fans, younger fans, don't realise the history that Everton actually have within the game. Um, who aren't Everton supporters? Um, Historically, yeah, Everton should be, but they're not because they're not actually regularly in the top six. But on the quality, I think it's a top six. Third to 10th is close. That's how good the league is getting. Yeah, you could argue that. I've obviously got some more club histories videos to do. Um, I want to do the Burnley one because I've just got to get my team's biggest rivals done. I want to do Blackpool. I think they deserve a video. I want to get Liverpool and Arsenal done. Manchester United are important because they're and Man City. I want to get all the Northwest clubs done that are professional, and that includes Fleetwood and Morecambe. Get them all done and dusted, and that includes Oldham as well. Get them all ticked off the done list, and then Sheffield Wednesday edges it historically. They've won more silverware than United, although both have won the league. Um, Kettering, Kettering Sound. What's romantic Kettering? Not too far from Corby, in the East Midlands. There's a lot of. I want to do as many of the current and previous Football League clubs that have been. I want to do as many of the current Football League clubs as I can before the end of this season. Um, and yeah, get them done, and then we can look at then doing some rugby league and rugby union club histories, and then player profiles in the build up to both World Cups, league and football, rugby league and football. Get some player profiles. I've actually got a very good player career video to do on a rugby league player, Mitch Orbison. Fantastically underrated player, Mr. Utilitarian, Mr. Versatile. Had played over 300 first grade games, won 3 NRL premierships. The Mitch Orbison video is going to be good fun because to play over 300 games and to score on your 300th game, I think he played 303 games in his career, won 3 grand finals. I think he won a minor premiership or 2 in there as well. I've got to do a video on him. That's something I've got to do. Oh yeah, look, I mean the RFU choosing the Red Rose of Lancashire, considering that Yorkshire is the heartbeat of rugby league. Yeah, that's a bit of a two fingers. Um, Even though there's a few Lancastrian clubs that also helped found the rugby league, the rugby football league or the Northern Union as it was known, rugby Northern Rugby Union, in 1895. Uh, I might go do a Worcester Warriors full history from start to finish at this rate. That is true. I don't want to do a video like that. I think the situation at Worcester and the situation at Wasp, which is also serious but is less reported, and it's been rumoured that Wasps have money troubles for several years now. Is quite troubling. The oldest sporting ground in England. I know Goodison Park is one of the oldest football stadiums currently going, although Anfield technically is older. Um, the county ground is quite old, which Notts County play in. Ewood Park is quite old. Turf Moor is ancient. I'm trying to think. I couldn't honestly tell you. I know Twickenham is quite old. I'll have to look at the oldest sports ground in current use. I know I would have to have a look at that because a lot of clubs have rebuilt and moved stadiums, but I think the oldest ground in continuous use is either Anfield or Goodison. Anfield's older than Goodison, I know that much. Um, um, I'm gonna have to have a look at that. I will have to have a look at the oldest. I know Ewood Park is one of the oldest grounds in continuous existence. St James's Park in Newcastle is another one in continuous use. Goodison Park until it gets demolished in 2025. Anfield's older than Goodison though, because Everton used to play at Anfield when they first started up. So Anfield is about 14 years older than Goodison. Maidenhead's got an old ground, yes. That York Road is falling down. My mate's pub used to be on the corner of the ground back in the day. It's either Notts County or Bramall Lane's quite old. Hillsborough's quite old. The county ground, yeah, the Notts County ground is quite old. Port Vale's ground's quite old. Vale Park. There's a few. Yeah, there is a few. Stamford Bridge. No, no. Bradford Valley Parade is a lot younger because Bradford's not as old. Bradford was only formed in the 1900s. Bradford City. Bradford Park Avenue might have an older stadium. Northwich Victoria's ground's quite old. Deepdale. Deepdale is one of the oldest grounds in current use for site. It's been redeveloped massively, but Deepdale. I'm gonna have to look at the oldest stadium. I'm gonna be cheeky. I'm gonna cheat because what are we looking at? Oldest stadium in the UK? Yes. Ibrox is quite an old one. Up in Scotland. Let's have a look. Oldest stadium in the UK because I think there's one in Scotland that might be older. Bramall Lane. There you go. 1862. Bramall Lane is the oldest stadium in the UK. 1862. No, it's Bramall Lane in Sheffield. The 32,000 all-seater stadium is in fact the oldest league stadium in the world. Football was first played here in 1862 and has been in constant use ever since, hosting the very first floodlit game in 1878. It would have to be. That is the oldest stadium still going. So it's the oldest league stadium in the world. So for any league sport, yeah, it has to be. It's Bramall Lane. Oldest stadium still in use. The oldest stadium, no, that's in the US. That doesn't count. Oldest football stadium in England, Goodison Park, is the first purpose-built football-only stadium in football only. Goodison Park. That was purpose-built for the activity of football. 1892. But Bramall Lane is the oldest stadium because it has, yes, hosted cricket. Oldest stadium in the Premier League is that's incorrect. Oldest stadium, Pittodrie is the first all-seater stadium, which is Aberdeen's home stadium, where which was first used in 1899, but Aberdeen have been there since 1903. Two closest football grounds in the UK. England is 0.8 miles between Anfield and Goodison, but Dundee and Dundee United are actually close. It's only 50 metres. The oldest London football club is Fulham, 1879. Got to do a video on them. Biggest city, British city with only one football team, is Leeds. Which city has the most football clubs? That's London. Longest away day in English football currently is Plymouth to Carlisle at 389 miles one way. London has the most football clubs. Who has lost Arsenal's? Right, Man United have lost to Arsenal the most. Which town in England doesn't have a football team? Wakefield is the only city or town in England without a football team. Which Premier League team is furthest north? That's Newcastle. Football League clubs longest distance. That's Man United has been beaten the most by Arsenal on 71 occasions in the league. Man United won 85 of their league games against Villa. That's interesting. Smallest football club in England, Glossop, is the smallest location in England to have a football league club. Glossop North End AFC used to play in the English top flight. There you go, they're the smallest ever top flight side. Which English county has the most football clubs? Right, outside Greater London, which Bedfordshire has 59 football clubs. Norfolk has 54. Cumbria 51. North Yorkshire 47. Derbyshire 46. That is mad. Bedfordshire has the most football clubs. How many football clubs are there in the UK? 40,000 in England. Proper sport is obviously football. Yeah, there's an interesting. I bet Plymouth fans wish Carlisle played in Scotland. I don't think they're in the same league this season. I think Carlisle are in League Two, so I think you can get away with that one. No, the oldest football stadium, which is designed purely for football alone, is Goodison. The oldest stadium, however, is Bramall Lane. What was it like attending games back then? What on the old terraces? Crowd capacity. It would have been a lot different to what it is now. Um, uh, a lot. I think uh, it's a difficult one, like saying what was like viewing a match back in the 1890s or 1900s or 1920s like then to what they are now. Stadiums weren't all seat. The first all seater stadium was Pittodrie, um, but it's completely different. Um, yeah, Bramall Lane's been in constant use since 1862. Um, Bramall Lane's 30 years older than Goodison, which is the first football only stadium. So there you go. Liverpool, Anfield obviously hosted other sports. So Rushden and Diamonds, yes, but Glossop AFC is the smallest town to have a top flight team. There you go. But yeah, Rushden and Diamonds, that's mad. Oh, we do miss Rushden and Diamonds. They had the best kit. The best kit, I have to admit. No, Newcastle to Bournemouth's further. Newcastle to Bournemouth are further away though. Does Tranmere's proximity to Liverpool mean they struggle for fans? No, they've got a very strong fan base in Birkenhead and the Wirral. I believe Forest Green are going to be a flash in the pan. They just don't have the fans to back up, so they'll be basically constantly in breach of financial fair play with the owner. Basically, they don't have the fan base, and the facilities aren't good enough. The infrastructure isn't good enough um, to sustain the team. Um, and Gloucestershire and Worcestershire is rugby union country anyway. They're fighting a losing battle. Um, he's a knob. Is the answer, Dale Vince. Technically, some of his employment practices are illegal as well. So you have to be a vegan to play for us, which is technically in breach of employment law. But there you go. Uh, yeah, his energy company isn't necessarily as nice as he claims it is either. Um, but no, I can't see Forest Green. That they are literally a glorified pub team. Um, I can't see them being a sustainable team going forward. They just don't have the fan base. They do not have the fan base or the catchment area. They're playing in rugby union country, so they're already on a losing battle in regards to um, uh, trying to trying to develop. Oh, it does, but other than that, they're not going to make any money because the owner's going to have to constantly pump money in breach of financial fair play, which means the club will then get punished for being in breach of financial rules, which means points deductions and punishments and embargoes on transfers of players, etc., etc., etc. If the EFL and the FA want to actually pull their finger out, because they're not going to earn enough money with income, not unless they sell players at a profit. Not going to earn enough money from fans. The ground is not big enough. The fan base isn't big enough. The away end is shocking. Yeah, Gloucestershire, outside of Gloucester and Cheltenham, doesn't have the population to really sustain. They're not the south, the west. Well, Gloucester and Gloucester and Worcestershire are actually in the technically part of the West Midlands, really geographically, but the West Country is rugby union country. Um, I'm not really interested in what a lot of what Tyson Fury says. He claims he's retired now. He's coming out of retirement to fight Usyk. That becomes a bit farcical, really, if you think about it. Um, but no, the West Country is actually, as a part of the country, underperforms sporting wise, but also is not as economically as well off as the Southeast, the Midlands, the Northwest. Ironically, it has the lowest average wages. There's a lack of corporate money. Um, and there you go. Can the Northeast handle another league club, Gateshead or South Shields again? Well, they've got Hartlepool. I think I think of course they can. It's a football mad part of the world, and you know I think they can. I don't see why not. Um, Look, if Bristol can have two professional clubs, you know Newcastle, because Gateshead is basically in and around Newcastle. Yes, Gateshead is part of Tyne and Wear. They 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 absolutely can. Football is the sport of choice. You know, they absolutely can. Um, there's a very concentrated population in the northeast, yeah, and the player production line backs that up. Player production line backs it up. Um, is it a ready rivalry? I think Newcastle Sunderland's a bigger rivalry, obviously. Gateshead hasn't obviously reached the same level as Newcastle or Sunderland. However, there's an opportunity, but they have a much smaller fan base because of you know the catchment areas of Newcastle and Sunderland and then how they then overlap into County Durham, and then you can't forget Hartlepool as well. Who also have their own um, catchment area, and then just a bit further down, you've got Middlesbrough, and they all their catchment area goes into County Durham and bits of North Yorkshire. But it's a pretty mad part of the world, and the fan bases are even Hartlepool level fanatical. I've got a video on Hartlepool actually. I've done Newcastle, I've done something Hartlepool, and then Middlesbrough are the other northeast clubs that are in the football league that I've got to do videos on. No, Middlesbrough again, football mad part of the country. Um, the northeast is football mad, yet just down the road in the York in Yorkshire, it's rugby league. Um, no, uh, footy mad, absolutely. It's just it's football country. Like no other sport gets a look in. They've tried with rugby union has given it a go in Newcastle and had some success. Rugby league they do the Magic Weekend at St James's Park every year, and obviously County Durham Durham have the cricket as well. Um, but no, it's football country. It always has been. It's the sport that has obviously taken off, and it makes you wonder why rugby league and rugby union have struggled. Yes, you could. You could. I do agree with that. Harrogate is still in Yorkshire, mine, but Hull, yeah. Um, why don't Durham have a better team? Because it's cricket. Cricket's Durham. Um, Cricket's the sport that Durham's quite good at as a county, and I don't understand why. They've got the university in Durham, which has got a very good rugby program as well. Um, I don't understand why, but you've got to see the fact that Newcastle, Sunderland, Hartlepool, Middlesbrough, they draw their youth systems from that era. Steve Bruce is a big cricket fan, yes, he is, because it's the county sport. For whatever reason, cricket is in Durham is the sport of choice, whereas the rest of the northeast is football with a little hint of rugby in there. Um, but no, Steve Bruce is a big fan of the cricket. Yes. Um, and he is from Durham, and that is the sport of choice up there. Um, for whatever reason that may be, that's where the northeast is such a unique part of the country. It's not in the hotbed of football, rugby league in Yorkshire and Lancashire, but it's there. Berwick is the northeast, is in the northeast, but should it be? That's what you call a proper border town historically. It's in the middle of nowhere. How common is it for fans of all local football teams to attend youth academy games for their team? I've been to an FA Youth Cup tie between Reading and Man United 21 years. Is it 21 years ago now? Yeah, 21 years ago I went to a Youth FA Cup tie between Man United and Reading at the Badesky, which is Reading's home now. Well, now it's the Select Carling Stadium, but basically the Badesky. Um, or Green Park, it should actually is his official name. Reading's home ground 21 years ago. There was a smattering of fans there. It doesn't get the attention it should do. You know, the reserves used to get much higher attendances than they used to. Reserve games. They're not well advertised. Tickets are actually really cheap, stupidly cheap. Um, but that was 21 years ago with my school, um, and it was a midweek game in the middle of winter. The weather was terrible, dreadful weather, just dreadful weather. Um, and um, and I think the attendance was about 1,000 or something. Um, my first match was December '96, so I'm not as old, but I'm old. But I'm not as old. December '96 was my first game that I went to. The second game I went to was actually a rugby union match at Twickenham between Newcastle and Harlequins in '99, February '99, and uh, then I went. Um, so I've been going to sports since my seventh birthday. So no, I think Scottish football is just outside of the top flight, and some of the stadiums in the top flight are small. Um, it's money. It's money and economics. Simple answer: money and economics. At the end of the day, there's less money in the Scottish economy. Um, that but some of the clubs, because of the lack of competitiveness in the Scottish game, that has impacted attendances in the last 25, 30 years. Yes, um, there is no doubt on that. That would a United Ireland domestically be beneficial? Um, I don't know how that would work. Really, there'd be a lot of politics behind that. Um, whether it would actually work or not is debatable. I think the issue would be possible security concerns, the sectarianism, obviously, and the some of the political terrorism kind of thing goes with that, um, and the current situation with the FA of Ireland financially, that would become a bit problematic as well. Um, plus, UEFA UEFA would have to get involved, and that then just becomes a whole other layer of negotiation and discussion, because that also then impacts qualification for the European. I do believe the Republic still does play a summer league. Um, And this is why rugby union, I honestly believe in the Republic of Ireland, has now become the dominant sport and the most successful sport. And there's a reason why Ireland, for such a small population size, much like New Zealand, are quite dominant rugby union. Um, the Gaelic Amateur Association sports, um, obviously, is the more rural game, and the more urban game is rugby union and football. No, the Scandinavian leagues are summer leagues as well. I think that's what is actually hurting the Irish national side and the development players, um, and is having a negative impact. I do believe that. I think they are out of sync with their nearest neighbours, such as us in the UK, France, and the Low Countries. So where Irish fans pop up every now and then. I think it does have a negative impact. Yeah, I think the Northern Irish game is in a better position. Yes, I do agree with that. There's not a lot of money in the Northern Irish game, but it's in a better position. That is absolutely agreed. And they play in the winter like everyone else, apart from the Scandinavians for climatic reasons. But why the Irish league plays in summer? No idea. No idea. That you get less snow in Ireland than in the rest of the British Isles. Um, are joint leagues a bad idea? Um, you could argue the NHL and the AHL are joint leagues in the US and Canada, as in fact all the major leagues are, apart from the NFL, CFL. Um, but they're a franchise-based model. The Benelux proposed Benelux league, there's a lot of politics behind that, and a lot of and that it's going to meet a lot of roadblocks. Um, and again, UEFA has to get involved, and then and then the two FAs have to collaborate as well. And then you've got to sort out the media rights, and that just it becomes a complete um, political minefield. Um, it does become an absolute political minefield. Then there's a lot of administration and bureaucracy, which sponsors, policing, ticket pricing, all sorts. Derry City back to the Northern Irish League. Political reasons is why it's in the Republic of Ireland League. There's a lot of political reasons. That could be problematic for security concerns as well. Um, there's a lot of politics behind that, for good or for bad. Um, Linfield is on the brink of qualifying for the first ever UEFA competition. That would be massive. But Glentoran have already played in the old European Cup against Juventus in 19. Oh shit! When I've got a program from this, it's going to piss me off. Glentoran played Juventus in the European Cup in, I'm going to say 77, and I've got a program. Um, United Rugby Championship thing. Basically, the rebranded Pro League has it helped the countries outside of South Africa. Welsh Rugby Union's bankrupt, so it's just rebranded a league that had problems. Basically, what it's done. Because the Welsh game is still in financial crisis. You just rebranded a crisis and just changed the name, hoping that people don't realise that it's got the same problems it had before. That's what the United Rugby Championship is. It's the Pro League, Pro 14, with a different name. That's basically what United Rugby Championship is. It's just the Pro League with a new shiny name and a couple of extra South African teams in it. That's all it is. It still has the same structural issues it had before. And now you've added the South African game into it, which has got structural problems as well. So you've just swapped one problem for another. Um, uh, I think in regards to the United Rugby Championship, it's club rugby union. I when it comes to rugby, I watch the international game in rugby union and the club game in rugby league. That's what I prefer. Although this World Cup, the Rugby League World Cup, I believe, is a great opportunity for the global growth of rugby league as a game. Um, but the club rugby union is in a real mess, and the international game has problems as well. Um, but it's what it is. And then in regards to the proposed Benelux League, there are some pros and cons to it. I can see. Does it really help? I think no. It's more than just issues with the contracts. There's a lot of there's a majority of clubs are struggling financially, and if two are on the verge of administration, one definitely with Worcester, and Wasps are close to following Worcester down the same path, and with other clubs being mentioned as having money problems, it is a concern. But Wasps have actually had money problems longer than pre-COVID. Wasps had some financial concerns for a while. Yeah, Benelux is an interesting idea. However, um, combining you combine the two, maybe even three, if you include Luxembourg, three or two or three league systems together, um, you would have to then combine the lower tiers as well, and it does complicate things a little bit. Yes, it does open up the option um, then for other ideas, but then it does also impact national sides and UEFA coefficients and Champions League qualifying places, domestic cup competitions like the Belgian Cup, the Dutch Cup, etc. It then does, yeah, Champions League places, Europa League places. It really screws all that up. It, yeah, and if you took Rangers and Celtic out of Scottish football, yeah, there's your answer for that one. Yeah, there are some head scratchers there. The Belgian club game is in financial mess. Combining the two leagues together means the Dutch are basically bailing out the Belgians for their incompetence, basically, which is generally what the Belgians want to happen. Is the revenue sharing, the TV deal bails out the mess that their domestic league structure is in, and it has been for a long time. Um, I think the Dutch don't want to do it. I don't know if they do have a playoff um, in Belgium, but the Belgian league is in absolute shambles financially, absolute shambles. A Super League without English clubs in it, well, that'll be less money then. Less money then. Um, like yeah, Turkish football's has had match fixing scandals and corruption scandals for decades. Turkish football is in a mess as well. Um, there's a lot of domestic leagues and a lot of nations where, be it football or rugby union or cricket or whatever the sport may be, which is in an utter shambles. Um, and it's not just to do with the pandemic. It's this is a long-standing issue, um, which is manifested through either weak global or regional governance, corruption being allowed to manifest itself. A whole range of issues have caused a lot of the situations to transpire and get to the stage that things have got to, and Yeah, no Turkish clubs in. That tells you something that again the UEFA coefficient is broken. They keep taking the Champions League final to Istanbul. Kind of embarrassing when there's no Turkish sides in there. No Russian club. Nah, it's not really a loss. It's no big loss. Um, UEFA and in fact most global governing and regional governing bodies have made it very very clear on their position and have done for quite some time. So it's no big loss. They're not very competitive anyway. So it's no biggie. It's like when Yugoslavia was kicked out of Euro '92 because of the beginning of the Yugoslav conflict. It's there's precedent. It's just 30 years apart. That's it. But yeah, the constant going back to Istanbul for European finals, yet no Turkish clubs in Champions League this year. It's kind of ironic, isn't it? Really. Um, I think it's high time UEFA got rid of the scrap the coefficient because it's not working. Um, quite frankly, and then actually looked who actually does qualify for the Champions League because it's not always champions. Well, Russia's just corrupt because even the ice hockey's fixed. The ice hockey's fixed as well. But no, CSK and Spartak and Torpedo Moscow and Zenit. Um, they were winning everything, weren't they? What was the player pool for them at that time? In what were they winning? Oh, Italy. Italian clubs. Yeah, Italian clubs have had a very successful spell. Ruben Kazan, they've gone. Um, oh yeah, no, yeah. The USSR were quite good at a lot of sports. You look at the Olympic medal tables now, and Russia being the main nation, continental toilet. Yugoslavia. Imagine if you could do a combined. We had this question of a combined current Yugoslav team. That would be just ridiculous. That would be stacked. I think it would still not win anything. You can have all the stacked talent. Um, you what? Well, no, actually, no. The USSR had a decent team in the '80s, and in the '60s as well. '60s and '80s, the USSR had two good spells in football, but for the most part, '70s wasn't very good, and then the '90s came along and it was the CIS, and then it just collapsed. But in the '60s and then in the '80s, the USSR had a good batch of players in the '60s, and then in the '80s, Yugoslavia just produced talent the entire time. Um, and Czechoslovakia used to have the Czechoslovakian side of the '60s, '70s, '80s was pretty good. Um, very underrated side as well. They came up. They had some world class players um, over the years, and they still do create. You know, the player talent is not as good now coming out there. It is and isn't. It is and isn't. But again, you can have a stacked team and not be very successful. You can have all the superstars you want and not win anything. Or you can have a team of hard-working, you know, passionate players who fight for each other, and you win everything. So you can have less talented players who win more because they're more united, or a team of superstars that can't win anything. That's how that works. But that's a good one. That is a good one. The Czechs were Euro. Yep, the Panenka penalty. The Czechoslovaks, yes. They Czechoslovakia had some brilliant players over the years, but now the Czech Republic, Poborski back in the day was a good player. Jan Koller was a good player. Rosicki was a good player. Um, but they're not producing the talent they used to. Uh, but Czech Republic and Slovakia, ice hockey country. Football is not the top sport. um, by any stretch. Oldham Athletic have announced the Rothwell family have secured ownership. Good, good, good. Um, that's good to hear. Um, a Kosovo team have just qualified for the Conference League called Balkani. Um, I think considering obviously the history and the positives and negatives and all the social side of things, um, I think it is socially important. Historically, it's important. But of course, they used to play in the Yugoslav league system. Their clubs now, obviously, they weren't necessarily the top clubs in that system, but it's a step in the right direction. Imagine if Europe team existed. Oh God, you could have that would be stacked. That'd be a stacked team. The European All Stars. That team would be stacked. It'd be too stacked. You would have to actually leave. It depends what formation. Now it depends what formation you want to use, style of play, um, and how big the squad size could be. But you could actually be leaving world class players out because of the formation or style of play or tempo. You want same with South America. Um, if you're going to put together a squad of all the confederations, so the Asian, Europe, North CONCACAF, CONMEBOL, AFCON, um, and you're putting together a team, good players are going to miss out, um, and that then you'll have world class players who wouldn't be in the team. That's a problem. Um, but a South American All Stars versus a European All Stars squad, like say a three-match series or something. I think that would be very very close, and the amount of good talent you would have to leave out because of whoever becomes your manager's got their style, and they've got to get the best players to fit that style. Um, these fun concepts, but you are leaving players out. Who, if you had it depends on the manager you would have to manage the team. And the problem you then have is depending on the manager you put in place for that team. So let's have a look at this hypothetically. For example, let's say you've got Klopp available, Guardiola, Mourinho, Tuchel, Eddie Howe at Newcastle, for example. Let's just say any of current or ex Premier League managers, and you say to them, "Okay, we're going. You got or Ancelotti or Mancini or whoever it may be. Each manager has their own specific preferred style or preferred tactic. Some are more pragmatic than others and go, right, the players I've got available. So Mancini is a very flexible manager, for example. Viali, as an assistant, has been a first team manager as well in his own right, rather than an assistant. Um, it then becomes really interesting, um, really interesting, um, because some managers are pragmatic with the players they have available at club level or international level, whereas others have a set style and they bring players in to suit their style, which I think is a flaw with some. I prefer pragmatic managers who are more flexible in their tactics and the style and what they expect of their players in attack, where they're a little bit more flexible in attack, but in defence they're well drilled. So the possibilities are endless. Let's put that out there. The possibilities are endless, um, and infinite. Yeah, a combined. an Africa combined African team would be quite a handful, but they wouldn't be good enough defensively, in my opinion. Defensively, they'll be too suspect. There's not enough structure in their game, um, and I don't think there's enough quality African defenders out there to really have the depth to have like an African squad of a high enough quality defensively. In attack, they'll be all attack from the Africans defensively and goalkeeping. They're not. They're very suspect. It will make it fun though. It would make it fun. Asia will be dominated by Korea and Japan and Saudi Arabia, as they are the most successful Asian sides for getting to World Cups and playing at World Cups. Um, the South American team would be scary as well. Very, very scary. But these are fun concepts that can be discussed, and they're subjective. And of course, everyone has their preferred style of play, and that would be fun though. I think it will be a toss up between Europe and South America. Personally, myself, the Africans would be entertaining, and the Concacaf team would have a bit of Central American, Mexican, and Central American spice and a bit of Caribbean colour and energy, and then look at the Canadians. You have some the Canadian team are quite tasty as well. And there's a good couple of Americans like Pulisic to have in there. Oh God, yeah, Oceania would be hopeless because Australia play part of Asia. Oh, I forgot Australia would benefit the Asian one. Yeah, I mean, the problem with places like Oceania is it's rugby and cricket country, and that's where you hit a brick wall in developing the game. And there's a lot less, corporate money in Australia and New Zealand. Um, and that's what you need is the sponsorships, the finance, the development, and the TV deal, and it's just not there because it's rugby union, rugby league, cricket, Aussie rules, and there's a limited amount of corporate money. There's a limited population size. It's a smaller population size, wealthy population, but limited in size. So Australia is one of the biggest land masses in the world, with a population that's predominantly on the east coast in a handful of cities. It makes sense to have Australia in the Asian side of things because it is what it is. Yeah, Toulouse have obviously been relegated from the Super League. It would be nice to see New Zealand for population size do produce a lot of. It's just a sports mad country, and I think overachieve sports wise. Um, and yeah, New Zealand does massively overachieve on a sporting level for their population size, but they put a lot of emphasis on sport through education and sporting pathways, amateur grassroots. There's a reason why their cricket side's so good. Obviously, rugby union, rugby league. They've got some outstanding players. They're one of the favourites for the rugby league World Cup. Um, the, 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 the the reaction from the New Zealand press and fans about the All Blacks losing 6 Test matches out of 8 lets you know all you need to know. Tasmania, um, they could be getting the 19th AFL team if all goes well. There's a big drive to get an AFL expansion team to Tasmania. Tasmania's got a tiny population, though. It really does. It has a very small population. Other than the Northern Territory, it's tiny. Like 600,000 people or something. How detrimental is it to an athlete's mental health being on a losing team? Um, it all depends about the team culture, the team dynamic, what the dressing room's like. You know, I think if there's a negative culture within the setup, if there's and culture starts at the top. If there's a negative culture throughout the organisation, it can have a massive impact. Massive impact. But I've been part of sides that have obviously been losing and school teams and stuff. But if you get on with if you're playing with your mates and you're enjoying yourself, it buffers the loss a little bit. Obviously, you want to win or be play as well as you can, and obviously get some success out of what you're doing. Um, but culture starts at the top, and if there's a negative culture at the top of the organisation, it will filter through. Um, you need a positive locker room environment. You need a positive dialogue between players and coaches, fans. You know, effort's a big thing. If you see there's that lack of effort and you're losing, that's the sign of a bad culture, bad team. If there's the efforts there and you're fighting week in, week out, and you try, that's the sign of a good, healthy locker room that they believe in each other. They go, we're not winning, but we're trying to win. We're trying to get better. It's very visible in the NRL with the Gold Coast Titans and the West Tigers this season. Gold Coast, I think, some of their roster moves haven't necessarily worked. I think they're weaker now than what they were last year. They've stepped back a little bit. There's been some injuries and some player turnover, but the West Tigers are an absolute basket case. They shipped 70 points last week. The fifth highest defeat in rugby league history in Australia, and the highest worst loss in the NRL era since 1998. And that's including the Western Suburb Magpies, the forerunner to this team, having their two disastrous seasons in 98 and 99. They never got shipped that many points. So, and you can see there was a complete lack of effort by the team. They had checked out. They weren't there, and they were slaughtered, absolutely slaughtered. And it was very obvious that they were not there. There was no effort. There was no fight in them. That says to me bad culture, and that's been a big thing about the West Tigers for a good 2 3 years. Is the culture side of it, the atmosphere around the club, the fact that the coach has been sacked, the fact that they've got the worst for and against, and they don't look like winning a game anytime soon. Uh, One of their best players has been released mid-season early out of his contract to go to a league rival. There's a debate over two other players being released on loan to league rivals who are fighting for finals positions. And one of them coming out and saying, I actually like it at the team I've gone to. I want to stay. I want to get out of my contract. Um, the West Tigers are a club. Bearing in mind, they're a merger out of Balmain and Western Suburbs. And the Western Suburbs were awful. I've done a video on their horrifically bad seasons in 98 and 99. Like, they get worse. You think 98's bad, look at their 99 record. It is horrific. And then Balmain ran out of money as well. They merged together. And then they somehow avoided getting the wooden spoon in every season. Somehow. God knows how. They've managed to win a premiership. Again, God knows how. But for the most part, they finish 9th or 10th, although this year they are finishing last. Would a 40-team World Cup of football work? Well, they're expanding it to 48. Like the rugby, was that too many games? I think 32 is the maximum you should go to. But I think the next World Cup in the US, Canada, and Mexico is going to be a step too far. I fear. But again, it's FIFA trying to maximise the revenue, and it does. I think it does help those emerging nations and those secondary nations that otherwise wouldn't have qualified or haven't qualified as regularly. You do have some good world class players in their ranks, get that exposure at a World Cup. I mean, look, George Best never played at a World Cup, and when he was playing, the World Cup was 16 to 24 teams when he was playing. So, yeah, I think it's good for the exposure for some smaller nations or nations that you know have world class players but don't regularly qualify. I think that is a boost for some nations. I think it's a boost for the African and Asian teams because more African and Asian teams will qualify. We'll see what happens with the Rugby League World Cup and the Rugby Union World Cups. Rugby League World Cup's expanded for this year. Rugby Union World Cup, we'll see what happens there as well. Um, we will see what happens. I think there has to come a point where the lower levels of the international game in both union and league need to improve to a standard which is able to compete at a World Cup and actually win at least a game each. But the short turnarounds, the smaller nations or the lesser nations or those with less squad depth, the benefit of tier one nations are getting preferential treatment in match day turnarounds. And 14 Continental Football Cup, yeah, that idea's been broached before. How can entire stadiums during the World Cup be emptied and back again because of weather? Um, I couldn't tell you on that one. Right, anyway, I'm going to call it an evening. I've got to be up, obviously, quite early. I'm absolutely shat. The weather today was horrible. I got absolutely drenched, soaked all the way through. Uh, hence why my hair's turned to a massive perm. But no, the weather was horrible today. Yeah, we look. We'll see what happens with Qatar. I can see it not being a great tournament. If I'm being honest, and I think we'll see what happens. I think having it mid-season is a completely different aspect that we're not used to, and we'll see what happens. You're getting our crap weather we've had the past few days. Yeah, we've had thunderstorms and flash floods, and it was yesterday morning. It was 85% humidity at 6 a.m. This morning it was 91%, and we work in Celsius over here, not in Fahrenheit. So it was 20 degrees Celsius yesterday morning at 6 o'clock with 85% humidity. It peaked at 28. Today it was 27 degrees at warmest with 91% humidity. And yes, there were thunderstorms. It wasn't cold. It was absolutely chucking it down. And I didn't feel cold at all. I just got absolutely soaked. Absolutely soaked. But anyway, I'm going to call that a day. I'm worn out. Work has wiped me out. Thank you very much for all your questions. Really appreciate it. Good discussion. We've ended on talking about World Cups and structures of World Cups, how many teams should be in a World Cup and quality levels. Really appreciate that. The history videos will continue at some point. And then what else? And I've got to do a Mitch Orbison career video for the NRL. That would be great fun. And a Corey Parker one as well. They're going to be great fun because they played their entire career at one club each, and they won a lot of success. And Mitch Orbison really is, I think, a very underrated rugby league player. I've done a QPR history video. It's on the channel. It's Queens Park Rangers Football Club. It's already up on the channel. QPR video. QPR's up on the channel. Thank you very much, and I'll have some more content for you soon.